I remember once we reached orbit, ask you to be in your seat with the harnesses on you until they make sure every system is functioning properly, because if it's not, they're going to just take you back down. And finally, everything checked out, and they said, okay, you can open up your seatbelt. And for the first time, I floated up, and I experienced the microgravity. And as I floated up, there was a window next to me, a porthole, and I looked out and saw Earth. And it was such an emotional moment for me. It has an energy that you don't feel from a picture. It was alive and warm, and it has this energy of life, and it was such a mix of emotion.
The Soyuz TMA-9 and the Expedition 14 crew now coming into view just over the limb of the Earth.
I was out there, completely separated from our planet. All my memories, all my experiences, everything that I loved, everything that I hated, everything that made me who I am, it was right there in front of me. And I was completely separated from it.
Anousheh Ansari making a visit to the International Space Station, followed by Commander Mikhail Turin.
And I never felt that freedom in my life.
All right, Anousheh, thanks for sitting down with us. I'm excited to have you. I want to go through just the adventure you've been on, essentially, and what got you to here, and then we'll also touch on what you see for the future, which I'm excited to hear about. So, young Anousheh is born in Iran. Tell me about that growing up there.
Well, it was a fun childhood because I had a head full of ideas and a very curious child. I think I drove my parents, especially my mom, crazy by asking why. As a child, we would sleep outside summer nights, and I would just gaze at this beautiful night sky and ask these questions about why am I here? What are those shiny objects out there? Is there someone else out there? And all those questions is what made me believe that the answers are out there, up there amongst the stars.
The Soviet Union takes a commanding position in manned orbital flight with the mission of Yuri Gagarin, April 12th, 1961.
I looked at the night skies, and it was this wide field for my imagination, and I played in that field and imagined other worlds, other beings, other aliens, other civilization, and I wanted to go there to visit them, to explore it, and to experience it. As human beings, I think one of the most precious gifts we have is the gift of imagination. And imagination is like a spark, an idea, something that would just start in our head, and it may be because of, something we saw someplace or something we watched on TV. I grew up watching Star Trek. I watched Star Trek growing up and imagined myself as the science officer, as Mrs. Spock on board Starship Enterprise. I didn't want to be the captain, but I really wanted to be the science officer because I wanted to find the answers. When I was growing up, I drew a picture of my flight to space. I drew this beautiful spaceship that would take me to my stars, and I showed it to everyone. I showed it to my parents, to friends, to family, to everyone, to my teachers, and I told them I'm going to go to space. And of course, they looked at me, they smiled, they said, "Oh, nice, this is really good. How are you going to go up there?" I said, "This is my spaceship." And they looked at me, and I could tell that they were not taking me seriously. So it became my passion and something that drove me to study math, science, engineering, physics. So it's been a blessing for me.
As we explore the reaches of space, let us go to the new worlds together. Not as new worlds to be conquered, but as a new adventure to be shared.
July 1969 AD. Here, men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
My entire life, there's been a ton of turmoil in Iran. What was the climate like there when you were growing up?
Everything was fine until I was about 11 years old, and then the revolution happened.
There are all sorts of reasons for the violence that has beset the Middle East in modern times. But much of this turmoil has been caused by the internal political revolutions which have taken place within many Middle Eastern countries since the end of World War II.
It was scary. As a young kid who never experienced violence, I was hearing gunshots and demonstrations, people turning cars over and setting them on fire, buildings being put on fire. So it was scary, and not even a year or two into it, then the war started with Iraq.
Two states which have lived through particularly profound revolutions are Iraq and Iran, with its Islamic Revolution of 1979.
We had bombings and air sirens. I was not old at that time, but still was older than the rest of the kids around me. So I became like the one that calmed them down when the sirens went off, and having to go to shelters, and everything was rationed, fuel, food. So just spending your time in different lines and trying to optimize your time to make sure you get the essentials. So it was a period of adjustment, and when I reflect back on it, a period of learning for me and growing in terms of a sense of responsibility. My father worked for a wine producing company before the revolution. So when the revolution happened, they shut down the factories, of course, and he went out of job. So he was at an age where he thought that he's set for life, and he had a nice career, and he was the head of sales, and he had all these plans for retirement, and all of them were just poofed, out of reach now for him. I was getting older and getting closer to the age of wanting to go to university, and part of the acceptance criteria is to do sort of an interview with the neighbors and see the background of your parents, sort of a background check. And I knew I won't pass the background check, so my chances of getting accepted was slim. And that's when we decided all to move out of Iran and come to US.
The Soyuz 2 flight by 3 Russian cosmonauts successfully linked up with the orbiting Salyut space station. After a record-breaking 23 days, Russia's history-making mission has ended in tragedy for the 3 pioneer cosmonauts. The 3 heroes died mysteriously when their capsule plunged back through the Earth's atmosphere. Their tragic end now raises serious doubts about the safety factor in America's plans for their...
When we came to US, I thought, okay, that's my chance of, maybe applying to NASA and becoming an astronaut. But I soon realized that the chances of me being an astronaut is very slim. I didn't even speak English when I came to US, and I was about 16 years old. My aunt drove my sister and I to school, and she gave me a piece of paper. It's like, you go figure it out. So we went to the school. It was this massive school. Lots of people, everyone was walking around, and I'm standing there like, I didn't know what I'm going to do. And I waited until everyone went to the classrooms and the hallways were empty, and someone approached me and of course asked me what I was doing there. I'm sure I didn't understand what they're saying, so I showed them the paper and I started, speaking in French. And I think she understood that it was French, so she went and got the French teacher. And then she helped us figure things out. And so we had the English as a second language class. So I started learning English. Took a lot of math courses because the language of mathematics is universal. So even though I couldn't read English, I could solve the equations. So it took me the next year to finish high school and then go to college.
Flight 7 carried the first 5-person crew, including the first American woman to fly in space, Sally Ride.
John, we have had one more of those intermittent dropouts, but the spas came right back up and no other problems.
I got to University of Virginia, UVA, in the field that I wanted, astrophysics. And my mom looked at it and she told me that I didn't speak English well. The only job that I could get by with an astrophysics degree would be to become a professor. And since I didn't speak English, there was no point. So I should think of another option. But I knew for sure that the reason was she wanted me nearby. And there was another university bus ride away from our apartment, and that's where I ended up going and studying engineering. So the semester before I finished, I found a job through a classmate of mine. He told me about a summer internship at his brother's company, which was MCI back then. MCI doesn't exist anymore. It was the long-distance company that merged towards a series of mergers with Verizon.
My Space Jam buddies and I stay in close touch with MCI's 5 Cent Sundays.
Just 5 cents.
I got the job, summer internship, and then they liked my work so much that they kept me afterwards. And that's where I met my husband too. So my brother-in-law is the one who introduced me to the job, and 3-4 years later we got married, and that's how my whole career started at MCI. When I came to the States, I wanted to become an astronaut. I thought, well, this is my chance, this is my opportunity. But, things were different. I had to study, I had to find a job. So I became an engineer. I was very happy with the career path that I had taken. I was very successful. But there was this thing missing for me, and this passion that I had inside that I decided I'm not going to let go. I had no idea how I'm going to go about making it happen and making it a reality, but I figured that as long as I have it alive inside my heart, that I'll find a way. MCI decided to move the engineering group to Texas, to Dallas area. And after visiting Dallas, we decided we don't want to move. So we talked about what's next and why don't we start our own company. We would come up with these ideas for new services for the telecom industry, the industry we knew. And that was successful, and then we started our own company building software products. So we sort of were hitting on all marks, and it was the same time that Dennis Tito had convinced the Russians to take him on a trip to space station. I remember I was watching the news one morning and I saw an interview CNN was doing with Dennis, and he was talking about all the controversies, and they felt that having a private citizen on the space station is not a good idea.
I intend to help communicate the ISS and try to convince the American people to give continued and larger support to NASA.
So I was watching this thing and I'm like, wow, this is the way I could go to space. I knew that my chance of becoming an astronaut was not great at all, but I figured that if he can figure out a way to go as a private astronaut, I could follow his footsteps and do it. And I just knew that now I just need the money, because that required a lot of money and we didn't have any money. We had put all of our savings and everything we owned in the company. So it became a motivation actually for me to try to grow the company and try to use that to fund my space hobby. a lot of times, even our far-fetched dreams, we will find ways to accomplish them, but sometimes we're so busy. We have our head down and we're doing our day-to-day job and doing the things we're supposed to do that we don't even see those opportunities. We don't even recognize them when they come around. And for me, one way to keep our dreams alive and make sure that we will see those opportunities is to do little things in our daily lives that will remind us. And that's what I did. This is actually how I dressed to a big employee meeting that I had, and I made my entire management team dress up in Star Wars costume. Just little reminders, things that would remind me every day I have this passion inside. So when I sold my company, and I had an opportunity to take some time off and try to find a way full-time, guess what happened? Peter Diamandis came about.
I'd like to take a moment now to describe 3 programs that we are announcing here today. These are near-term, intermediate, and long-term goals.
It was the Apollo program going on really from 66 to 72 that lit my heart on fire. Here I am as a kid watching humans walking on the moon. And it was something which I thought, my God, that's incredible, and I want to do that too. And so how am I going to get to go? I had already given up on NASA being the route I was going to go. And I said the only way is going to be if there's private launch companies, if you can go and buy a flight to space. And one day, a dear friend of mine gives me a book called The Spirit of St. Louis. It was written by Charles Lindbergh, I think in 1954, wins a Pulitzer Prize, and it chronicles his journey as a young airman to fly from New York to Paris nonstop to win a $25,000 prize. This Orteig Prize, offered in 1919, inspires 9 different teams who spent $400,000 trying to win this $25,000 prize. And I'm doing the math and saying, wow, he offers $25K, there's 16 times that amount spent, and he only pays the winner, which is Lindbergh, which is the most unlikely person to do it. And as I finished reading the book, I said, that's it, I'm going to create a prize for private spaceflight.
The first is, in fact, the X Prize, a $10 million contest that we are organizing here.
But I didn't have $10 million.
And this $10 million award will be going to the winner, which is the first team to do the following.
And I didn't have any teams.
To privately build a spaceship, and privately finance that ship, a ship that's able to fly to 100 kilometers altitude, carry 3 individuals, and do that twice inside of 2 weeks.
We announced it in May of 1996. Amazing worldwide news, but I can't raise the $10 million. I went to probably 150 benefactors and sponsors asking them for support, and they all said, isn't this too dangerous? Someone's going to die. Why isn't NASA doing this? And can we really pull it off?
In all of my interviews, I had always talked about my passion for space and wanting to be an astronaut and fly to space. And Peter read one of these interviews and decided that, I need to speak to this person.
She had just sold her company to Sonos Networks for $1.3 billion and went on vacation to Hawaii for, I think, 6 months. I tracked her down.
My assistant called me, it's like, there's this guy who calls and he's, I keep telling him you're not here. He's very persistent, he wants to meet you. And I asked her, well, what does he want? And she explained that, I don't know, but I think he wants to talk to you about space, something to do with space. You came in with all your presentation materials and PowerPoint and very nervous. And I didn't know at that time that, this was like the last prayer that you had in saving the organization. So we sat.
Anousheh Ansari is an extraordinary woman. I was blessed to find her. I saw her as the perfect person to fund my X Prize after 150 people had said no. She and her husband Hamid and brother-in-law Amir ultimately said yes. And we renamed it the $10 million Ansari X Prize in her honor.
The winning team was the team funded by Paul Allen, Mojave Aerospace. So we were in Mojave waiting for the flight to happen.
We're live here at the Mojave Airport on the ground, but as you can see...
And they were putting these sacks of sand because the requirement was that you had to carry the equivalent weight of 3 people.
Release. Arm. Fire.
And I kept telling them, just put me there, just put me. Don't put the sax, I'll go, I'll sign anyway where you want. But I couldn't convince them, so that didn't happen. The prize was won. It was the first anniversary of the winning of the prize. We were celebrating with people from all the different space agencies, astronauts, entrepreneurs.
If I could please ask the Ansari family, Anousheh, Hamid, Amir, please stand up, pal. You are such an important part of our legacy.
One of the co-founders of Space Adventure came to me and said, Anousheh, you always talked about going to space. Do you want to learn more about the Russian space program, which Denis Tito flew on? There's a Japanese businessman who's going, but he doesn't have a backup. And if you really want to learn about the program, what better way to just go and train there and you get to meet everyone. And the question I asked was, will I really be next to real astronauts? Will I really be in the classroom? And he said, yes, you'll be right there with them. That was enough for me to actually say yes. And next thing I knew, I was packing my bags and I was on my way to Russia to train as a backup astronaut.
There's some fun stories we've talked about before there we'll get to in a second. You're training as a backup, but you have this incredible drive and focus. Obviously you didn't know what was going to happen, but I guess you were prepared it could be a chance. But what kept you driving towards just working your hardest as a backup?
When I landed, I decided that I'm going to spend this next 9 months training as if I'm going to space, because I wanted that experience. It was not a popular thing with the Russians because they didn't want a woman in the program. They tried very hard to get me out of the program, keep me out. I was determined that I'm going to stay and I'm going to finish it. I had to learn Russian, 2 hours of Russian class every day.
Я хочу русский хорошо in 1 year maybe. How to say in 1 year?
We had physical training, simulation training, just learning all the different systems on board the space station, on board the Soyuz. Met a lot of, cosmonauts, European Space Agency astronaut, NASA astronaut. So it was an amazing time for me. Really, I was, in heaven. But I wasn't going to space. I was there in training, but I had no expectation of going to space. My husband and my family, they all knew and understood how important space was to me. It wasn't really a hobby. It was something deeper. And I think it helped, especially my mom, thinking that I'm just a backup, I'm not actually flying. So she's like, oh, she's just in Russia, I traveled a lot anyway. But when the transition happened from the secondary crew to primary crew, then it was very difficult. On my way to the airport, I got a call, and Eric Anderson on the other side, who's a co-founder of Space Adventures, he asked me, Anousheh, do you want to go to space? And I'm like, yeah, of course. Like, no, I mean now, do you want to go to space on this mission? And I'm like, Eric, that's not funny. I mean, I was depressed. Everything was coming to an end. I'm like, it's not funny at all. It's like, no, I'm not joking. Do you really want to go? Because
the person who was supposed to fly developed kidney stones, so he disqualified. And they told me that, do you want to take his place? And I thought they're just playing a joke. And I didn't believe them. I said, that's not a funny joke. So they said, no, seriously, do you want to go to space? And when I really realized they were serious, I screamed so loud, I don't think I have ever screamed that loud in my entire life.
I said yes, screaming, of course. And it took a lot from my mom especially, but she again knew how important this was to me, and she didn't want to be the one standing between me and my dream. So she cried the whole time. She was on tranquilizers, but she never said don't go. She's like, I know you'll go and you'll come back to me because this is what you've been born to do.
At the end of it, they all say, just make sure that you enjoy every moment of it and take in every breath. And I'm looking forward to capturing my feelings and my experience while I'm flying and when I get to the space station. And then I will share it with everyone upon my return.
3 weeks before the flight, we all arrived. We went to what they call the Cosmonaut Hotel, and it's just a compound that's quarantined from everyone else. So the thing that was very difficult was I had not seen my family because I was in training before that. So we had to find a way to get them visas and somehow get them to come and see me before my flight. They were able to actually come, and because we were in quarantine, I couldn't actually go out and sit down and have dinner with them. So I was in this room with a glass in front of me, and they all came in. And I remember clearly they wouldn't come close, and they couldn't hear me. I had to speak to a microphone. They had to speak through a microphone. And they all just stood there, and then one by one they started crying as if I was already dead. And I'm like, it was really, really emotional. So finally I got them to come closer and spend maybe an hour together, and then they left. And the next time I saw them was as I was walking to the bus to take me to the rocket. So that was the hardest part of it.
You're walking to board a bus, to board a rocket, going to take you to the space station. What's going through your mind?
The whole time it was an experience that felt surreal. It all happened so fast that I kept thinking, this must be a dream. I'm dreaming and I'm just going to wake up, and I was waiting for the time that I would wake up. I kept thinking that I would be very nervous and scared as I was getting closer to the launch. But the closer I got, the more relaxed I was getting. And I had this calm and very grateful sentiment inside when I boarded the bus and then boarded the capsule.
T-minus 45 seconds to launch. Soyuz is now on internal power. Automatic launch sequencer is on. T-minus 25 seconds and counting.
This is what I always wanted to do, and the only thing I was anxious about is making sure that I will be in space. If something was supposed to blow up, I was just praying that please blow up after I'm in space. I didn't want all this to be for nothing.
5 seconds to launch. 2, 1. Liftoff of the Soyuz rocket transporting Mike Lopez Alegria, Mikhail Turin, and Anousheh Ansari to their microgravity home in space.
Once we reached orbit, ask you to be in your seats with the harnesses on you until they make sure every system is functioning properly, because if it's not, they're going to just take you back down. Finally, everything checked out, and they said, okay, you can open up your seatbelt. And for the first time, I floated up, and I experienced microgravity. And as I floated up, there was a window next to me, a porthole, and I looked out and saw Earth. And it was such an emotional moment for me. And I didn't expect it. I'm like, it's going to look like the picture I've been seeing. But it was so different when you look at it with your own eyes. It has an energy that you don't feel from a picture. It has this energy of life, and it was warm and alive, and it was like I was laughing, I was crying, I was excited. It was such a mix-up emotion, and I really, really remember that moment really clearly.
There was this life and energy that I could sense from our planet. And I was looking down on Earth, and I could not see any borders. I could not tell the cities and countries apart from each other. Walls had no meanings. There was nothing dividing us. And when I was looking down on this beautiful image, I was hoping and wishing that everyone on the planet could see it. And they could see how we're all citizens of this one planet. We are all the astronauts in this beautiful spaceship we call Earth, going through the universe, and how this would transform their lives.
The Soyuz TMA-9 and the Expedition 14 crew now coming into view just over the limb of the Earth as Mikhail Turin continues his flyover.
We are performing the roll maneuver.
We have contact.
Contact and capture confirmed at 9:21 a.m. Moscow time, 12:21 a.m. Central Time.
It took about 2 days to get to the space station.
Congratulations on a beautiful launch.
Thank you. I wouldn't be here without you.
And right before the launch, when I learned that I will be switched to the primary crew, of course, I had ideas of my own what I wanted to do, but there was no time. So I called my best friend who knows about space, Peter, and I said, Peter, I'm going to space, what am I going to do? And I wanted to do outreach. I wanted to share my experience somehow. So he said, why don't you write a blog? And I'm like, but I can't write a blog. I don't know how to write a blog. It's like, don't worry, just write whatever comes to your mind, right, about your experiences. He said, we'll publish it through X Prize Foundation.
I really, when I write from my heart, and it seems like people can feel that inside them too, and I'm really touching them, and it's a fantastic feeling.
We had to convince NASA to allow us to publish a blog every day. I got the permission, so I ended up writing the first blogs from space. And it was just about my daily experience of, how fascinated I was with the fact that there were Velcros on all the walls, and everything has Velcro, and you have to be careful where you put things because they float away. And I wrote about the way we eat food in space, or the way I wash my hair in space. I was listening to music, I would write about the music. I would write about what I was watching outside the window and my interaction with the other astronauts. So it became very popular and ended up having millions of people reading it and experiencing space through my eyes, which was like a novice, not a professional astronaut. And that's why they loved it.
فقط میخوام بگم متشکرم برای همه مهربونیشون، برای همه پیغامای خوبشون و امیدوارم که بتونم جوابای همه پیغامایی که برام گذاشتم بدم. مرسی.
So you're the first ever female spaceflight participant, we'll call it, adventurer, explorer, all the good terms, and the first Muslim woman to visit space. What does that achievement mean to you?
So it has a lot of meaning externally, but to be honest with you, for me, if I was the 50th, woman or Muslim woman or anything to go, if I had no titles, it would have meant the same thing from an experience. And I would have done it anyways. But the great thing about it is these titles, especially a woman, especially a Muslim woman, has given me an opportunity to talk to this wide audience of women who live in countries where they don't have equal rights, they don't have equal opportunities. They are told from an early age that they cannot do something, it's not appropriate for them, or they can't physically do it, or they're not smart enough to do it.
When my trip ended and I came back to Earth, I was very depressed. All of my life, I had completely been consumed by this big, audacious dream I had to go to space. And now I had done it. So what? What would I do now? And then I realized while I was on space station, I started blogging. And as I was looking through what was happening with this blog, I decided that perhaps my story can help other people reach out and go for their big dreams. There are many, many children and women around the world that all they need is just a little ray of hope, something that will inspire them and allow them to go after those big dreams. Just a little nudge will push them to think of a different life for themselves and a different life that they can build for their families.
So I'm glad that having these titles has given me the visibility to be able to inspire other women around the globe.
On this day, 10 years ago, a dream shared by every human on every land throughout all of history took flight. Thanks to the vision of a small team of bold and passionate space pioneers, their dreams, our dreams, have come true.
Please welcome to the stage Chairman and CEO of X Prize, Dr. Peter Diamandis.
It is so wonderful to have all of you here. It truly, truly is. Just tremendous reunion of a family who dares to dream. It really was an amazing journey of unknown 10 years ago, because at first we had no idea where the money was coming from. Then we had no idea whether we could really pull this thing off. And then we had no idea if the vehicle would actually work as advertised.
I remember at the 10th anniversary celebration of the Ansari X Prize, I asked you a few things about what was next for you in the X Prize, and I don't think you had the answers that turned out to be true, but tell me what happened in the last couple of years with you and the X Prize.
What I had no idea was that I would join X Prize as full-time as a CEO.
Allow me to bring on stage an amazing person, Anousheh Ansari.
I've flown to space, so I get a lot of requests to go give talks at universities and schools. And after the talks, usually people come and start talking to me. And I have to tell you, the compliment I get the most is not that, oh, it's wonderful that you went to space, but mostly they come to me and say, thank you for doing X Prize. Thank you, because it has given us hope, it has given us a grander vision, and it has taught us that we can go after impossible things and make them happen.
Thank you, Anousheh. Thank you.
After some convincing of my husband and my brother, they understood how important this was to me, and I ended up coming back to X Prize, but this time in a different role, and being able to sort of, with Peter's guidance, take it to the next level.
The X Prize Foundation runs incredible large-scale competitions around the world that set very clear, measurable, objective goals.
Competitions and prizes can actually bring innovation to solve not just any problem, but really big, challenging problems.
Technology that increased the rate of cleaning up oil spills.
Technology to help keep people safe.
To make sure everyone is healthy.
Feeding people, educating people, cleaning the air, exploring the oceans or space. We're changing what people believe is possible.
So we have a lot of success in all these areas. What we've proven is that a prize money, let's say 10 million, like what we put up for the Ansari X Prize, can bring tenfold in investment from outside to solve the problems.
1, 2, 3.
And then you can launch, based on those technologies, new markets that can be billions of dollars. Like you look at SpaceX and Virgin, they just went public. These are new economies that are created as a result of these innovation that comes out of these prizes. And when you look at our history, you see that we've only learned and evolved when we question.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
And I hope that we continue to ask hard questions here at X Prize. I will always ask hard questions of myself and of the life that I lived and continue to live. And I think that's, what makes life interesting.
One thing I learned about my experience of going to space, it wasn't just about going to space. It was about the whole journey. I like to share this from Charles Lindbergh because afterwards when I read it, I felt so close to what he said about his experience of flying solo across the ocean. He said, "I owned the world that hour as I rode over it, free of the earth, free of the mountains, free of the clouds, but how inseparably I was bound to them." That's how I felt when I was on the space station. And I never felt that freedom in my life.
I told everyone, I'm going to go to space. They looked at me and I could tell that they were not taking me seriously. So I decided I'm going to prove them wrong. So I did. I did go to space, and I did go to space on a rocket ship that resembled what I drew, just to prove them I could predict the future. That has been the story of my life. Everyone who knows me, they know not to challenge me. If you tell me I cannot do something, I'm going to prove you wrong.